Good afternoon. This video is being recorded because this may be my last chance to get images that document the work involved in fixing the drainage situation here at this rental property we intend to rent out if possible. And we're soon going to be backfilling these trenches. So this first one, there's already been pipe run through it, and it appears to be functioning because we had some rain earlier today and the trench is pretty much dry. And while I'm here, I might as well get a better image of the carpenter ant damage that was done because a previous owner hadn't maintained this drainage. The soil had piled up to the roof level and the carpenter ants moved in. We're going to be replacing this roof because it was installed using rolled roofing, which isn't intended for a flat roof. We're going to put a rubber roof on the place, probably next week after next. I have 2 weeks off to do this work. So I'll take you around the back side where the pipes have been run. And excuse the slight shakiness, but I have to stay upright and not trip over things like I almost did just there. I'm going to cross over onto the roof, and we had thought we were done with just this part, because we had discovered that this section back here had been bricked in and could do its own drainage. But on further thought, my brother decided that he wanted to put a downspout in this corner here and be able to drain it away. So this last Saturday, he and I teamed up and we did the trench along the back side here. Now let's just look up higher in the yard and try to get closer so we can see the big picture of what it looks like now. So I'll start at the right. Here along the hillside, we catch a lot of water coming down off the hill above. So that's in a trench, and it's been draining good for days now. It meets up with this trench that my brother and I put in on Saturday. Those two lines feed down along the deck and out towards the front street. Now, you'll see there's a mound of dirt going across the yard. That's what I worked on last week and my wife finished up on Saturday. And it's intended to catch the water coming down off the hillside above. Now, if you look closely, up there where the blue tarp is, that's where one of the spring boxes is located. And just above it over here, there's a green box that is the spring box for the spring that is located here. That's the one that's been developed. Both of those springs come down a trench, join the trench across the yard, and head over to the pond in the corner of the yard. In addition, near that shrub there in the yard, my brother has a strong suspicion that there's a spring there, because there sure looks like a spring, but because it's not high enough, we're not going to be able to take it over to the pond. So it's coming down a trench where it meets the trench coming from alongside the deck. I'm going to pause this now, climb down off the roof, and take a closer look at these. Alright, I'm down off the roof in the front of the house, and we'll take a closer look at the conditions and how things are doing here. We might as well start where one of the places the water ends, which is here, where it dumps into a drainage pipe. As you can see, is running now. This is the end of that line that we had dug to go up to the patio. I'll take you around the other side of the fence in a second. Now backing inside the fence, just off the deck, we can see where the lines run down from the ditch that goes up the hill to catch water, and there's water running in that ditch now, so it's doing its job. Now over here is the ditch we had to dig on Saturday after taking up those bricks and digging it far enough down to be able to drain downspouts. Now turning around, I'll try to work my way back down to where we have the other line coming down the hill from that other spring. As I had said from the rooftop, this line here meets the one going out to the street and comes down from underneath this shrub. We think it's just about there, or slightly above it, where we find another spring. So we're planning on catching all that here. There may have been an attempt at an earlier time to put a French drain in, and can I get there? So we've got water coming down from that old French drain, and it's somewhere around here that there's a spring. But we're not going to try to capture it. We're just going to try to channel it away and keep it away from the house, because the intent is to try to dry that thing up. Already, even today, we had a good rain, and in the past when you would come down here, it would be like walking on the edge of a swamp. This is the trench that my wife finished up on Saturday, and she managed to get it running good enough that we have water flowing in this trench as well and leading down to the pond as we intend. Now, rather than backtrack, I'm cross over the trench here and take you up to the springs. The first spring we put in is actually starting to overgrow at this point. In fact, it's settled quite a bit. That's pretty interesting. Alright, I haven't taken a look at this. But the rock was up a bit higher. But where that pipe's coming out is where the spring head's located. This plastic is here because it's going to be used to cover up the second spring, which is there. We'll take a look inside this spring box because it's been doing really good, and I haven't had to clean this one out. Let's see if I can steady the camera. And it's performing just as I hoped. So I don't have to do anything with this one. Once it's set up, it seems to just take care of itself. Now, the outlet of that spring box travels down the trench with the other ones, but there's a second spring over here that I haven't looked at for a couple of days. I'm not sure what I'm going to find. Well, I've got some sediment and silt down in there. That'll all have to be cleared out before I cover this thing up. But this spring basically captures water from two levels. If you look at the far wall there, that is water coming out of the rock face, most likely at the same elevation as that spring is located. But let me step across the trench. There is also another source of water down there at the bottom where it contributes most of the water that comes out of this particular spring. The outlet of this spring comes, yes, it's a shaky video. You don't know how shaky I am. And it comes down to its spring box, which is located here. Pause while I jump across. So this is the spring box that my brother fashioned from 5-gallon bucket with a gamma seal lid. And it's doing okay today, but one of the things that is still an issue is because that spring head is open, I get some debris getting sucked up by the spring head. So that means I've got to keep this outlet tube here from clogging. So it's just a matter of knocking the debris away. Okay, try to steady the camera a little bit. So that water flows down those pipes and through the trench down to the bottom of the hill. I'm going to button this up and move to the bottom of the hill. So those water lines come down the hill and they make a right-hand turn here and head down the ditch to the pond. Now here at the corner, because of the way PEX has a natural curve to it, I had to put rocks on it to keep it low. Otherwise it would have popped up, gave me a high spot in the lines, and I had erratic flow coming out the far end where it's discharged into the pond. I'll move closer to the pond. As I did the digging, I pulled out rocks, which almost dictated how much work I had to do to dig this ditch, and collected them on the side, reused them because I had a bit of a low spot there, so I propped it up to keep the line running downhill, because I really started to learn what a difference it made in how the water coming out behaves. Here we can see the pond and the pipes coming into it. I'm going to pause as I jump around to the other side of the pond to get a better look from there. Here at the pond, there's 3 pipes coming out. The one to the far right is the overflow. Nothing's coming out of that. That's good. One of these valves has water coming out of it, and that's the water coming from spring number 2. The other valve is closed to route water to another pipe that I got propped up in a tree over here. I have it propped up in a tree not only to be able to see how high I can get that water to go, so in the event I wanted to put a water feature in, I know I can get it to flow well at that height. But also the drop allows for a lot of turbulence and helps to keep the pond aerated for the fish that are in here. So let me shut up so you can hear the water doing its thing. Alright, now here there's a stone wall above the pond, which is the wall of the upper pond. The upper pond's got a crack in it, so it doesn't hold water. The water still comes through from that pond and feeds the lower pond as it did in the old days. Someday I want to get around to fixing that pond, but that's not going to happen soon. Let me take you up above the upper pond though to see the other stuff. Now the upper pond is heavily silted in. It'll have to be excavated whenever I end up putting it back together. But it has flow through it now that comes from this footbridge. And the footbridge is over a very short little stream where the water comes down from what is just a ditch now, but we plan to improve it. Just up there a ways is where we found another spring. I'm going to pause and take a look at that one. Alright, this is the spring we just discovered on Saturday, and it revealed itself by how wet the ground was in this area. So we dug around. It looks like it's coming from there or somewhere in this region. It's hard to tell without starting to dig and find it. So that's the third spring that we've got going here. I'm going to turn around a little bit so you can see off in the distance, beyond that tree that refuses to die, I'm going to show you yet another spring. Alright, I managed to navigate back to the fourth spring without falling on my butt, which I came pretty close to, because there's water downhill from this flow that we got going through here, and currently we are just dumping it down the hill into the creek where I've got that little footbridge. Well, seeing I'm here, I might as well take you down there. Alright, once again made progress without falling in the mud. So, at one time this was our best method of getting down to the ridge. And it consists of these stairs I built out of old tires and the footbridge across the stream. Here we can see the dam that I put in years ago, but now is completely silted in. It comes from a couple of springs that are up the gully there, but it also catches a lot of ground runoff coming into this. Come on, focus. There we go. Comes into this gully. And I had already emptied that dam out by hand twice before I decided I got to come up with a better solution. And just building a dam across a stream that has fast flow is not a good idea, because when the water gets to the dam, it slows down, it drops its load. I thought I was going to be planning ahead, and I had put valves in underneath, thinking that I would be able to drain the silt from the dam. But whenever it dumps 2 foot of silt on top of it, that doesn't work so well. Now this other line you see coming out to the right and going underneath the ground was the supply line to my ram pump. Excuse me, I'm going to take you around so we can look down the way. Now, further down in this stream bed is where the ram pump was located. It's in the same area where I was doing those experiments with trying to get water to flow up to the other grapevines. Now, let's see, is there anything else I want to mention while I'm here? Up here to the right is that private forest that I've mentioned more than once. And I'll spare you the walk up there because it is sort of overgrown. But the intent is I want to get water up there from these resources that I have here. And with time and a ram pump, I might do it. And by the way, that's not garbage over there. That's my granddaughter's collection of deer bones. So, I guess that's it for now. And while this stream will probably not be developed too much more as far as I'm concerned, those other ditches that are up on the property there will end up getting filled in and hopefully doing their job. Take care.